Good evening. Welcome to the Press Club. Another edition with me, Kendall Burton, and my co-host, Mr. Earl Buske. We'll be reviewing the big stories making the news this week, as we do every other week. This week, there's a lot to talk about. Let's start with a nationwide newspaper. The biggest ever local cricket tournament bowls off today. The Voice newspaper headline: Zika fears for tourism. Some bookings already cancelled, and the Red Cross prepares for battle. Talking about the same Zika threat. The Star newspaper is Prime Minister Kenny Anthony St. Lucia's happiest employer. And of course, the Star Person of the Year is revealed in the person of former Attorney General Rowan Williams. Mr. Buske, what are the big stories that stuck out in your mind this week?
Well, the big story that remained on my mind this weekend was the fact that both of the major parties are going into election mode in a bigger way. Each of the parties have a national council meeting this weekend, one in Soufrière, one in Grosselet, and coming out of the two events, each party has announced that they're going to be that they can be expected to announce either more candidates or, in one case, to complete the slate. So it's very clear that 2016 can be described as election year. It is already being treated as election year, and that can be borne in the fact that almost every other issue that is in the news has been made to have, if not a broad political twist, but certainly a partisan election twist. And the fact that the most pages in The Voice this weekend is a supplement with the name of every single voter. And the question came to mind: if your name is not on that list, then does it mean you don't vote? But we'll get to that.
Yeah, but how many people even want to vote? Because even before we came on here, we were having this discussion. And you hear that a lot, that people are so disenchanted and disillusioned. You hear a lot of people saying, I'm just not voting this election. And I'm not sure, we've discussed it here before, how much or how seriously the political parties are taking, those, for lack of a better word, threats, not to vote, not to turn out.
I think the I'm not voting something is a phenomenon that comes every year. The element of voter apathy is very, very evident in elections across the region. I think this year, however, the conviction that I'm not going to vote is more a reflection of a combination of the, first of all, the lack of appreciation by most young people of the importance of the vote and what it can mean. What standing on a line and waiting to put an X can eventually mean. They see it as a meaningless exercise. They rather stay home and press buttons. But also, when that is said, in the case of voters, people who have voted, I hear people saying, listen, I've only voted once. Others who said, I'm not voting this year. And I think that when a voter who has exercised his or her franchise says, I'm not voting this year, it is obviously an element of frustration with their party, which can be either government or opposition party, but they're not going to cast the vote. Or it could be their frustration with both parties. That, it ain't making sense. I voted for one, I voted for the other, and I'm still not seeing anything. Or it could be, I'm not voting because I haven't made my mind up yet. I have not been, I have not been given a reason to decide that I'm going to vote this year. Because there are people who, as it should be, take time and listen to what the parties have to offer.
Yeah, well, that's expected. You have the undecided who are going to wait, like you said.
And that's why manifestos, for example, that's how manifestos came into being, so that previously, what ought to happen is that the manifesto ought to be presented early, but you have a situation developed everywhere else where whoever puts out their manifesto first, the next one copies. So how do you do that? What has been opted for traditionally is that the parties wait until the last minute, the week before the election, to put out their manifestos, by which time most people have made their minds up. So I'm saying the whole question of improving, reforming, electoral reform and improving the system. What we hear more is calls for changing the voting system. Let's go electronic in order to reduce the number of spoiled ballots. The electoral department will most likely ask you, is it worth the cost? Or what else can be done to reduce the spoiled ballot? But when it comes to people saying that they're not going to vote, we have to be concerned about it as media persons from the standpoint that at least we, if nobody else, we ought to understand the importance of the vote. And if we trace that there is the usual element of voter apathy, but that it is compounded by confusion or frustration, then that's a topic that we need to discuss like we're doing here, that we need to write about, that we need to ask questions about,
but
that we need to ask people, why are you not voting?
Yeah, but do you think it ought to be part of the political campaigning for either party or any party? That aspect of voter education, voter motivation, apart from the usual mudslinging and that sort of thing, or does the media now have an educational
that is
role to play
where
as well?
we have always been speaking on this program about the role of the media in contributing to the improvement of the electoral process. And there is a very lively discussion happening now. The General Secretary of the Labour Party, Leo Clark, said that the Labour Party is willing to have enter into public debates with the other party, the UWP, on any issue once the rules are properly spelled out. The Voice, in an editorial on Thursday, said, listen, we support the element of introducing proper debates and pointed to the presidential debates in the United States. And the Voice came out 200% in support of the Labour Party's invitation to the UWP to engage in a process of public debates between candidates, etc. And the Voice went further to say that it is calling on the UWP to don't waste time and quickly accept the Labour Party's offer. And concluded by saying is that once the rules are done, this is going to contribute to a better understanding on the part of people of the importance of proper debate rather than the mudslinging we're talking about. And then we'll go further. I know, for example, in my role at WVent, that the station has already started advertising itself as the election station. WVent started with the town hall meetings, introduced it, which were also supported again back then a year ago by The Voice in an editorial, in the Star with another thing by Michael Walker. So there is support for town hall debates and roundtable discussions, and that is where I think the press could come in, because the Minister of Agriculture, today's Minister of Agriculture, a month ago issued a public challenge to his predecessor, Mr. Ezekiel Joseph, for a discussion on the past, the present, and future of agriculture in St. Lucia. And he says he would prefer if that debate is moderated by the press. I suppose he was taking a page from the US presidential thing. And I'm saying that when you have a situation where politicians the political actors are asking for debates, offering debates. Mainstream media, The Voice, is supporting the issue. Talk radio, WVent is saying we're willing to be a platform. So all of these elements are out there. Who's going to bring them together? I think it should be the press. And the press would say, I can see the media association or a grouping of individual press persons, whoever, is saying, listen, let's take the bull by the horn rather than wait until the mudslinging goes into, you know, irreversible mode. Let's see if from a very early day we could get involved and help draw the rules and guidelines for such a debate, which we would be, I mean, only too glad to be able to not only cover, but contribute to that level of political education, you know, and one of those debates can be and ought to be the importance of the youth vote, why youth should vote, why we are, why the young people are wasting an opportunity that others don't have. I keep saying in Taiwan, teenagers cannot vote because you have to be 20 to be able to vote. But they do vote because by 20, they recognize the value and the importance of the vote. But our young people are frustrated, or the adults are frustrated, but the young people just have never been attracted to vote because some of us in the media have so painted politics and politicians as nasty and dirty that the profession is widely seen. You know, politics is not something that people encourage their children to want to enter, and children or young persons do not, even if they may see themselves in that role, for fear of peer pressure, they're not going to go in a group and say, listen, I want to be the next prime minister, or I want to be a governor general, or I want to be a candidate or a mayor.
Rather than something to aspire to or be looked up to, you look down on it. You're talking about the Media Association perhaps embracing the opportunity to lead in terms of organizing these debates, perhaps because they have been distracted by the Star's headline for this week is the Prime Minister Kenny Anthony St. Lucia's happiest employer, a reference to the appointment of Jade Brown as the Prime Minister's press secretary and the shift of JDR Jean-Pierre Emmanuel over to the SLP's communications manager. That has been a hot topic on the social media mainly. I know a couple of the mainstream media houses have carried the story as well. Rick Wayne elaborates in this article here today, arose by any other name. He details his history as the Premier's personal assistant, I guess.
Does it say that a Jade by any other name is still a Jade?
Something to that effect later on in the article. But you know, do you think that all the brouhaha and the discussion and controversy about this appointment is warranted?
No, I think it's useless. I think it was unnecessary. I took umbrage, like most St. Lucians, to the statement and the statement made by the President of the Press Association in relation to the young lady's appointment, questioning her credentials. He's out of place. The Prime Minister chooses his press secretary, and it's not something that comes under the public service. The Prime Minister decides who he wants to be his press secretary. It's not a job that anybody can apply to. And Clinton, if he feels that the Prime Minister's press secretary ought to have at least a degree, then, you know, he's entitled to share that view, but he cannot shove it down Jade's throat, the absence of a degree. I mean...
But was it really an issue of academic qualifications?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know of many journalists here who went to school for journalism. You know, I don't know how many have degrees, first degrees and second degrees. I will, you know, I've been in journalism for decades, and I would put my hand in fire to say that 75%, you know, of journalists, active journalists, not reporters, journalists, did not go to journalism school. And a significant majority of people in journalism did not originally, you know, leave school with a mind on journalism. There's this popular English CNN lady reporter who her name slips me, but her sister got a journalism scholarship, and the sister wasn't able to take it up and was giving it up because she got a more lucrative job. And she said, hey, I'm not going to let that scholarship pass. You know, I'm going to take it. And she took it and went into journalism, and now she's the main anchor on CNN, the English lady. She covered the Iraq War. Her name will soon come. But back to the, I'm not saying that our profession does not need qualifications. There are journalism courses, but to suggest that the Prime Minister's press secretary should be somebody other than who the Prime Minister wants, it's going too far. And of course, he did offer an explanation that blah, 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 but I don't think I haven't heard anybody who has even commented or responded to the explanation. I think in the normal approach in life, somebody gets a job, you may or may not agree, give them a chance, see if they can do it. You know, that's what jobs have probations for. There are 3-month probations in the average job where they give you, you know, a 3-month probation. I was press secretary for 9 years. Clinton used to come to me as a reporter from HTS. I never asked him where his credentials to ask me those questions, you know, and him understanding that the young lady is at a point where he was before today. We need not look down on colleagues who don't have credentials, because journalism is the art of communication. And what counts in the job of press secretary to the Prime Minister, which I did for 9 years, is your ability to get the Prime Minister's message out there, to get the message of his government out there. The press secretary does not only represent the Prime Minister, as Jade pointed out. Yes, it can be said that Jade has large feet large shoes to fit. Yeah, but to fill, but I'm sure she can.
All right, let's take a break with you for one. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation. You're watching The Press Club. We'll be right back.